The screen opens in silence, just the sound of wind sighing through cottonwoods. A battered stagecoach wheel creaks as it turns in the dust. Then hoofbeats. A lone rider, his hat pulled low, drags behind him a rough-hewn coffin lashed to a mule. The mule's hooves strike sparks against the stones as he enters the dying town of Dry Creek. The townsfolk pause. Women stop their washing, men lean against posts. The saloon doors squeak and whispers pass like wildfire. That's the widow, ain't it? Widow McAllister, dragging her own coffin, mutters an old man at the trough. But it's no widow. It's a woman, late 20s gaunt, her face streaked with dirt and dried blood. Her dress is torn, one sleeve pinned where an arm should be. A scar cleaves her cheek like a lightning strike. She leads the mule and coffin to the center of town, where the sheriff once kept office before whiskey ruined him. She says nothing, just lowers the coffin, sits on it, and stares into the dust. A boy, no more than 12, dares whisper. Ma says she was left for dead by Comanche, that they carved her and let her crawl. The saloon crowd murmurs, tales of a raid, of a ranch burned, of a woman's screams carried on prairie wind. Some say her husband hanged himself from shame. Some say she begged for death and was denied it. As night falls, lanterns burn low. A rider approaches, different from the coffin dragger, broad-shouldered, with braids under a wide hat. A Comanche warrior. His horse moves with quiet command. Strapped to his saddle, an old rifle, a bow, scars across his bare arm that catch the firelight. The townsfolk stiffen. A native riding into Dry Creek at night is a dare, but he dismounts slow, ties his horse, and walks to the woman on the coffin. They lock eyes. Something unspoken passes between them. The crowd waits for blood. Instead, he kneels, touches his hand gently to the wood of the coffin. His voice is low, rough. You brought him home. The woman shakes her head, her voice breaking for the first time. Ain't no one in there. Just dirt. Dirt from his grave. A gasp rolls through the saloon crowd. The mystery thickens. The Comanche rises, and for a long moment no one breathes. Then he says, "Then we got miles yet to walk." They leave Dry Creek together, though not without resistance. The sheriff, half drunk, half bitter, warns her, "You walk with that red man, you don't come back. Folks'll turn their faces." But she does not answer. She walks beside the Comanche into the night, the stars blazing cold above. Days of hardship follow, crossing frozen rivers where ice cracks beneath their boots. Coyotes trailing them in the dark, hunger gnawing as they share scraps of dried venison. Storm winds tearing at their clothes and rattling their bones. Every mile stretches their strength thinner, but side by side they endure it. Around the fire one night, she finally speaks of the weight she carries. "When they took me, they didn't kill me. Not sure why. Maybe for sport. Maybe worse. I ran when I could. Thought if I come home, folks take me in. They didn't. They looked at my scars like I carried sin." She touches her cheek, the jagged scar that catches the firelight. Her voice falls into a whisper. "I'm not good enough to be any man's wife. Not after what they did." The warrior listens, eyes steady on the flames. Then, wordless, he shifts closer. He lifts her hand, scarred and calloused, and presses it to his lips. He does not speak, but the gesture carries more weight than a sermon. Her eyes glisten, but she does not pull away. When they reach the land where her ranch once stood, only blackened timbers remain. A child's toy half buried in the ash tells her all she needs to know. She collapses to her knees, her body shaking. The warrior kneels, scanning the ground. Wagon tracks cut across the dirt, fresh and deep. He knows the mark of the man who left them. Caldwell, the ranch baron, whose greed is carving the valley apart. Caldwell's men killed her husband, burned her ranch, and left her broken. Caldwell took more than dirt, the warrior says. He took what breathes. Their trail leads onto open plains. That is where Caldwell's riders find them, 10 men against 2. Hooves pounding like war drums, rifles raised. She and the warrior dive into a dry gulch as bullets split the dust. The sky darkens with the storm of the century. Lightning lashes the horizon. Thunder cracks like cannon fire. Mud churns beneath their boots as rain floods the gulch. The warrior fires with deadly calm, each shot finding a mark while she reloads with trembling hands. She tastes blood when a bullet grazes her shoulder, but fights on, fear and fury mingling in her veins. 3 riders fall. The rest retreat, leaving the storm to swallow their tracks. In the shelter of a ruined barn, she trembles, staring at her bloodied hands. I wasn't meant to fight. I can't kill like this. You already have, he tells her. To live is to fight. His words cut through her shame. He pulls open his shirt, showing her burns across his chest, lash marks from chains once fastened there. He speaks of capture, of refusing to die even when beaten and starved. Scars are the proof you still walk. Without them, you'd be in the dirt. She studies him, his scars a map of survival, and begins to see her own differently, not as a curse, but as witness that she endured. A silence falls between them, deep and heavy, but it is not an empty silence. It is trust, yet trust shatters at dawn. A boy they had trusted to guide them for a night's rest sells their trail to Caldwell's men. Hooves rumble again. They wake surrounded by rifles and torches. Caldwell himself rides out, fat with power, a cruel smile pulling at his lips. The whore and her savage. Thought you could crawl back, did you? This land's mine. Always was. He spits in the dirt and raises his hand. Hang him from the steeple. Drag her to town for shame. At dawn, the old church of Dry Creek stands like a ghost against the pale sky. Its bell is cracked, its steeple leaning, but Caldwell wants a spectacle. The warrior is dragged in chains across the wooden floor, his shoulders bleeding from a lash. She is shoved beside him, her wrists bound, her scarred face lifted for the crowd to see. Caldwell mounts the altar like a preacher, his voice booming. Let the town watch what happens to those who stand against me. The savage swings from the steeple. The woman, she'll crawl. The townsfolk gather in silence, their faces pale in the cold light. Some avert their eyes, some stare with morbid hunger. Yet whispers ripple about her endurance, about the warrior's calm even in chains. The sheriff staggers in, reeking of whiskey, but something in his eyes shifts when he sees them bound. He pulls the badge from his vest and hurls it into the dust. I won't play hangman for you, Caldwell. The days after the church fight pass like a haze. The town of Dry Creek, once ruled by fear, is unsettled. Caldwell still breathes, but no longer as a master, just a broken man kept alive by shame. His riders scatter, his name a whisper no longer sharpened by power. Folks who had turned away from her now glance with something different in their eyes. Not pity, not scorn, something closer to respect. She spends her nights under the cottonwood tree where the coffin had lain. The dirt she scattered still marks the ground, and the saddle at its base looks almost like a headstone. She sits there often, staring at the horizon, wondering if she belongs anywhere at all. The warrior stays nearby, silent more than he speaks, but his presence is a steady thing, like the weight of the earth beneath her feet. He hunts when food runs low, mends tack with quiet hands, and tends to her shoulder wound when it stiffens with pain. One evening the sheriff comes. No badge on his chest anymore, no whiskey on his breath. He kneels by the cottonwood and says, "Folks been talkin'. They reckon you might stay. Build again. Dry Creek's seen enough ghosts." His words hang in the air. She doesn't answer, not right away. The thought of building again feels like lifting a mountain, but somewhere deep in her chest a small ember glows. Later, as the prairie wind whistles through the grass, she whispers to the warrior, "I still see it all. The flames, the screams. My scars, they remind me every day." Her voice cracks. "I'm afraid if I try to live again, it'll all burn down just the same." The warrior kneels before her, his dark eyes steady. He takes her scarred hand, lays it against his chest where lash marks cross like rivers. "These remind me too," he says, "but they do not command me. They are not chains. They are maps. They show where I have been, not where I must go." His words sink into her like rain into dry earth. She lowers her eyes and whispers, "I don't know if I can be enough for you. I'm broken." He leans close, brushes his lips against the scar on her cheek, once more, tender as a prayer. You are not broken. You are tempered, like steel in fire. The night wraps around them. Coyotes cry in the distance, and the stars above blaze brighter than any lamp in town. In that silence, she feels something shift, not a sudden healing, but the first step toward it. Weeks pass. She works with her hands again, mending fences, helping tend a patch of land near the river. Some townsfolk offer aid. Others stay back, but no one throws stones anymore. The warrior stands beside her always, neither forcing her forward nor letting her fall back. Together they begin to rebuild, not just the land, but the fragile trust between a scarred woman and a people learning to see her as more than her pain. One dawn, she stands beneath the cottonwood, staring at the wide horizon. The warrior joins her, silent. She takes a long breath and speaks with a steadier voice than before. Maybe I can stay. Maybe I can live. Her hand finds his. He does not answer with words. He doesn't need to. His silence, his presence, his scars pressed to hers, they speak enough. The camera pulls back. The cottonwood tree bends in the prairie wind. The saddle at its base remains, a reminder of loss and survival both. But beside it, two figures stand together, unbowed by the dust of the past. The prairie stretches, endless, golden, and waiting. And for the first time in a long time, so is she. The morning came without songbirds, only the whistle of a dry wind across the plains. Smoke still curled from the embers of the outlaw camp that now lay scattered like broken shadows. Wade sat apart from the others, hat in his hands, shoulders bent as though the night's weight had never truly lifted. Boone's horse was tied nearby, its saddle empty, its eyes restless, as if searching for the man who would never ride it again. Maribel knelt at the edge of the ashes, her shawl wrapped tight though the sun was already climbing. Her children clung to her, the little boy pressing his face into her skirt, the girl too weary even to cry anymore. She looked toward Wade, and in her gaze was the question none dared speak aloud. What happens now when the gunsmoke clears? Wade rose slowly, dust clinging to his trousers, his boots heavy. He looked toward the horizon, where Boone's grave now rested beneath a pile of stones, marked only by the cross they had fashioned from broken timber. The rancher had no words for the man he had lost, only silence, the kind that could break a heart more surely than any cry. Boone gave everything. Wade said, finally, his voice low but firm, meant for the wind, for Maribel, for the children, and maybe for his own trembling soul. If we ride on and turn back to the world as it was, then his blood just fades into the dirt. But if we carry these folks to safety, if we give them a home, then Boone lives in every breath they take. Maribel's eyes filled, not with fear this time, but with something steadier, like trust. She reached her hand toward him, tentative, like a dove settling on a rail. Wade looked down at it for a long moment before placing his own hand over hers, rough against soft. The children pressed closer, their small frames finding shelter in his shadow. For the first time, Wade felt the faintest light pierce through the darkness in his chest. The ride back was long and heavy. Each mile carried them further from the lawless valley and closer to the ranch that now felt less like a place and more like a promise. As they approached, the fences stood mended, the barns waiting, the land wide and untamed but ready to be worked again. The house that had once echoed with silence seemed to draw breath as hoofbeats neared. Inside, Wade cleared Boone's saddle from a wall and hung it by the hearth. He spoke no word, but the gesture told all. This home would remember him. Maribel laid her shawl across the table, and the children wandered with eyes wide, touching every corner as though discovering a world that might finally belong to them. That night, as the lamps burned low, Wade stepped outside alone. The stars were bright above the plains, their silence older than sorrow. He thought of Boone, of the men they had put down, of the choice that had nearly cost them all. His chest ached with grief, but beneath it pulsed something new, unfamiliar but undeniable. Behind him, the door creaked. Maribel stood there, her hair loose in the night wind, her face lit soft by the lamplight behind her. She did not speak, only came to stand beside him, her hand brushing his sleeve. Together they looked out at the dark horizon where the prairie stretched forever, untamed and uncertain, but no longer empty. Wade breathed deep, the weight on his shoulders no lighter, but somehow bearable now. For he understood at last what Boone had meant when he said family could be chosen, not just born. And as the night wrapped around them, Wade knew his journey as a lone rancher had ended, not with the loss, but with the beginning standing beside him, quiet, steadfast, and alive.